opened with The Boys Are Back in Town, played a handful of newer songs, and then did the Monitor front to back, closed with a second rendition of More Perfect Union.
Amazing. I thought for a second you were going to say a second rendition of The Boys Are Back in Town.
That would be sick. Welcome to Noise Floor, a podcast about music and our favorite artists' discographies. I'm Troy Sennett.
And I'm Matt Kistler.
And today we are talking about the latest Death Cab For Cutie album, I Built You a Tower, released on June 5th of this year on Anti Records, produced by John Congleton, mixed by Carlos de la Garza. Before we get into I Built You a Tower, we're going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
I think this will be out. This should be out by the time that this episode comes out. I was on a podcast called Rock for Initiative. That is a interview show where people in emo bands or in the emo scene in some way or another talk about the weird nerdy thing that they love. And so I was on talking about Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere books and Shared Universe, and also talked about Star Wars and a bunch of other sci-fi stuff. It was a very fun interview, and that'll be out. I think it's coming out in the next couple days as we record this. So like I said, it should be out by the time that we release this episode. And Matt, you have a record coming out, or that will also be out by the time that this episode airs.
Yeah, this coming Saturday, as we're recording this, last Saturday, if you're listening to this when it comes out, the 22nd of August, I am in a band called Caitlin Edwards, the solo project of Caitlin Edwards from Bumsy and the Moochers. We have a record coming out called Skeletons and Flamingos. If I may say so myself, it rocks. If you like Green Day or Taco Cat or even like Emil and the Sniffers, I think you'll enjoy this record. We recorded it with Dan Precision, formerly of Rise Against, a band we have famously covered on this podcast, and I think it turned out great. So yeah, check that out on your streaming.
Yeah, it's excellent. I'm excited. So some stuff from our other aspects of our lives that you can listen to, or you can just keep listening to this podcast where we are talking about I Built You a Tower. I feel like we kind of did this perfectly, even though we timed our series so that the album came out, like when we were covering the photo album or whatever it was, and we didn't actually get to this record until it had been out for a few months. But I feel like that was perfect because we got all of the press and the other stuff they're doing around this record. We got the Tiny Desk session, and mostly we got this big Paste magazine feature about this album. And I feel like, I would have loved this album no matter what, but hearing it along with all of these interviews and all this other stuff that is coming out about it has just enhanced the experience of listening to this record even more. And so I feel like we kind of fell into talking about this record at the perfect time. But Matt, what do you think of I Built You a Tower?
So I listened to this record when it first came out once with no real reading into it. I think I listened to Riptides once before the album actually came out. And I mostly shelved it because I wanted to dive into it more around now when we were going to cover this record. So I had not really been privy to any of the press cycle that was building up around it. But I 100% agree with you. Everything around this record has just absolutely enhanced the experience of going into this record, kind of knowing it's I think people are kind of familiar who are, on the Death Cab bandwagon already with kind of more or less what the record is about, insofar that it follows Ben's divorce, not follows, but it is informed by the experience of going through that, which we'll talk more about because that's a big subject of a lot of these interviews and features. But yeah, just the way that everybody has been talking to Ben, Nick, Jason, everybody in the band about, I don't know why I just left out Zach and Dave like that. But it's such a wild time for the band because, I think we mentioned this on the last episode, back in 2023, they were touring on both Transatlanticism and Give Up. And that was also when Ben was kind of going through the separation that ultimately led to his divorce. And the weird emotional like stew that created for him specifically, and like, you know, revisiting these old records and like kind of recontextualizing them and like basically having to like enter that mode every night and then come back out of it into reality. And on top of that, you know, kind of like they've been talking about this a lot in the last few record cycles, but just like they've been a band for, you know, almost 30 years now. They are still, you know, getting a lot of people saying like, oh yeah, like Transatlanticism was one of my favorite albums. Plans changed my life. You know, things they did 20 plus years ago, like being, you know, more or less their legacy while they are still here making, dare I say, really fucking good records.
Yeah, I mean, Blake put it so well on our Narrow Stairs episode. He was like, everybody used to be a Death Cab fan. And I feel like the band has acknowledged that and is also at the same time still so excited about this album and about the places they went on it, and not in like a, you know, like a fake, like, here's our, of course the new record we made is our best one. And Ben, I mean, in one of these interviews,
Ben doesn't think that.
he you know, he does his own album ranking and puts the new album at number 5, which like clearly irked his publicist. It is just kind of a funny moment in one of these interviews. But I think everything you said, especially that, like you said, this is the second Death Cab divorce record, but it's very different than Kintsugi. And
oh yeah,
it is this album, and Ben talks about wanting to write about this experience without like airing dirty laundry about his relationship this time, and
right.
And wanting to write about this breakup as an internal experience. And that is what I latched onto so much with this record. I feel like the last big breakup I had was quite a long time ago. It was 2013, but I feel like everything about that Ben is writing about on this record is the way I experienced that breakup. And this album is just like cut me to my core with how it felt like these songs came out of my own brain in certain ways. And like to compare it to another, in my opinion, great breakup record, like Jimmy Eat World's Damage came out while that relationship was ending, which was kind of a harrowing listen and still is today.
Yeah,
and this to listen to this record and look back on that time in my life with the context that I have and the growth that I've had since then, it was very revealing. And I mean, that's all to say, I think this record is phenomenal. This is very nearly my favorite Death Cab album. I did not expect to be saying that, you know, a few weeks ago when we were talking about Plans and Transatlanticism. I think this album is just phenomenal.
It really is. And like, even you know, outside of the context of, you know, breakups, other like emotional separations, like this album touches on so much, like about things like compartmentalization and like dealing with you know, the song Riptides is specifically about living in the world right now while you've got your own shit going on, and simultaneously feeling bad about the shit going on in your life, and also feeling bad about the things going on in your own life, because everything is really fucked up everywhere. And saying that sounds really glib, but like that kind of sums it up in a really shitty way.
No, totally. And I mean, I think so, like you said, compartmentalization, and especially around grief and trauma and loss, and also just exhaustion is the other theme of this album to me. Mental and physical exhaustion are all over this album and its imagery. It weirdly not in the performances. I think the performances feel very vital and alive, and maybe that's a factor of just kind of going through the therapy and doing the work and being at a place where you can write about this stuff in a seemingly kind of healthy way. It just, the band feels energized and they seem happy. And I mean, Ben has always talked about writing their best stuff when the band feels good. And it all comes together on this. I think we can talk about the central image of the album, which obviously on the songs we will too, but we can talk about it a little bit up front, this tower idea. And that is been specifically about compartmentalizing and trying to, like you said, kind of hide the emotional weight or put it somewhere else while doing the transatlanticism and give up to her. And this idea that he started to think of his own life as a city skyline, with the essentially, you know, the Empire State Building is Death Cab for Cutie, and all these other buildings around it are these different relationships or these different times or pieces of his life, and they all are these buildings that all contain the memories of these certain little things. It's a really interesting way to think of like his own mind palace and putting it out there in the world and in this album.
Yeah, I really liked, like, I feel like I've read these interviews in like maybe the right order, because like that, like, being a way that he thinks about his like life in general now was like kind of slowly revealed to me. Like obviously every interview and feature talked about like kind of the tower metaphor, specifically as it relates to I Built You a Tower A and B, in which it is very much about like hiding your memory slash feelings about somebody away in a spot in your brain where you don't have to access it all the time or have it be at the forefront, but it has a way of sneaking up on you. Ben talked in that Paste feature about when he was really young, and his dad was, I guess his dad was in the Navy and was like deployed when he was really young, and I guess he had a moment when he was a kid where at some point he was like, Ben said to his mom, "I don't want a San Pellegrino, I want a Diet Coke," and his mom just like absolutely like broke down. Just like it seemed like such a small thing at the time, but like she was holding in so much stuff, like basically single parenting them, and dealing with with the fact that her husband was away and all this and that, and like just like thinking about like there are many things in my life where that has absolutely happened, and I'm sure most people's lives, where it's just like you're holding in a bunch of stuff and all of a sudden like the smallest thing happens and it just triggers a landslide, which is kind of an image that is used in one of these songs later on, which we'll get to.
Yeah, it just the amount of openness that he has when talking about this album is, I don't know that he's ever been this kind of clear about the imagery around an album and what's behind his lyrics before. And I don't know if that was a conscious effort to try to sell this album more or just something he wanted to talk about it. But it has enhanced the album in a way, for me, in a way that, I don't know, sometimes you don't necessarily want an artist to kind of reveal everything, and maybe he's still not revealing everything, but like it's refreshing to have him be so open about what these songs are about and the place that he was coming from with writing them. And it's, I don't know, I think I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it's all to say that I think this album is really good.
I think so too. One thing I want to mention before we move on is like you brought up that this album, like in its performance, is like very vital, and like we'll talk about like given production decisions that were made over the course of the songs, but just like kind of on the whole, I loved that Ben like specifically was like, yeah, like we've been a band for 30 years and like we will not name names, but like a lot of our peers like and people who have like entered this point in their career like get to a point where like they're playing these kind of like mid-tempo songs as a result of like they just can't push it any more than that, and they like really consciously wanted to avoid that. And I think a large part of that was, one, Ben said he was listening to a lot of Fugazi as he was writing this record.
Yeah, they keep coming up in the interviews. It's crazy.
It's honestly very cool that like I can definitely hear it. And like that is more, even more deeply informed by John Congleton, again, coming back to produce this record, him being a student of Steve Albini, who famously is a person who made people sound like a really good version of a band in a room.
Yeah, and that's how they wrote this record, which is the opposite of how they wrote Asphalt Meadows. Interesting that they both turned out so great. But this was written live with all 5 members together, and recorded presumably, mostly live like they did have done in the past. And it just, it has that energy. And it is also, I mean, it's a new beginning for the band in the sense that this is their first time off of Atlantic in 20 plus years. This album's on Anti Records. And so, yeah, there's just, there's just everything is coming together to just like renew excitement around this band, which is great. And like, even if you missed Asphalt Meadows or missed the last couple cycles or were just hopped back in for the Transatlanticism tour, like this is a great place to come back into the band if you haven't been following them closely in 5 or 15 years.
Yeah, especially if you have even if you have like been following and haven't been quite on board, because like I hesitate to say this because it like doesn't make a ton of sense, but like if you haven't been into the last few albums because they don't really sound like Death Cab, this one's probably the one for you, because it sounds the most like a Death Cab record that a Death Cab record has in a long time. And I don't mean that in a like retreading way. It's just like this sounds like maybe one of the best versions of that, especially at this point in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we get into the songs?
Let's do it.
This album starts with Full of Stars, kind of acoustic, slower song that I feel like the other elements of it sneak in. It's not a big, bold, punchy opener, but it sets the stage for the album in a really nice way. And also, is this title a 2001: A Space Odyssey reference?
I have to assume it is.
Yeah, I mean, the lyric is saying something a little bit differently, but that image, he must be familiar with that.
I cannot imagine a world where Ben is not aware of the possibility of people interpreting it that way.
But what do you think of this as an opening track for the album?
It is almost a little deceitful because I don't think really any other song on this record sounds like this. But I do like think that it like really thematically introduces you to the record. Like the opening image of These Nights My Head Is Full of Stars, constellations retreating. Soon you'll be wishing on an empty sky. Like you get introduced right away to this kind of like, we are in a very specific headspace on this album, and that is going to pervade for most of the record, even on songs that aren't specifically about this kind of like experience of being in one's own head during a time of tribulation.
Right, and recognizing this growing distance between the people, you and this person you're in a relationship with, or just recognizing a growing distance universally, which is like the literal idea that this image is based on, that the universe is expanding and the stars are getting further and further apart. And then like personifying that inner turmoil through this line, like, keeps growing and throwing tantrums like a child. It's a really well done lyric. I like it a lot.
It really is. And we right away get into like the kind of like inward reflection of it all. Like right before that, I've got this anguish I know will never be satisfied. It's always hungry, so I feed it. Like I'm doing this to myself, even if I'm like not really trying to.
To what you were saying a minute ago about this feeling like the most Death Cab album in a while, I think that Ben sounds like he hasn't sounded since the Walla production days on this song. It's such a vulnerable and delicate performance, and it sounds like he's right on top of the mic in a way that, like he hasn't been in years. Like the Costi production, I feel like, I think those records, like the Costi records, sound really good, and I think Asphalt Meadow sounds really good. There is an element, and Ben talks about this, as they maybe were trying to do too much with those songs, too many tracks, especially when they tried to play them live, and maybe an element of getting back to the we're just a band playing together element is also this is just Ben performing and not being hidden by all these vocal effects, and something about that makes this song feel so much more personal and so much closer.
Definitely, yeah. And I think part of that is a result of, like, I feel like John Congleton gets it. Like,
absolutely.
For lack of a better way of putting it. Like, there's a reason that this band vibes so hard with him.
Yeah. After that is Punching the Flowers. This was the second single released from this album. And this really kicks the album into gear with this kind of classic Jason McGurr shuffly groove and this really crunchy guitar riff. And, everything they're doing musically in this song is both classic Death Cab, and also there's new stuff you feel like you haven't heard them do before, like those extremely heavy bass hits in the verses that kind of like punctuate the lyrics.
Oh my god, yeah, the bass part on this song is so good. I love the tone so much. I mean, everything is really fuzzy on this song, but like hearing like full on bass chord hits is like it works so well on a song that is this driving.
Yeah, well, and it contrasts really well with the twinkly guitar in the chorus, that little melodic part I assume is either Ben or Dave Depper playing that, but it sounds so. It sounds like, what if we took what we were doing on We Have the Facts and played it through the lens of 2026 Death Cab? Like, it's awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is a like. I was a little surprised that this wasn't the first single, kind of in retrospect. But then again, like it's like it's a song that like it's very Death Cab, but also kind of doesn't quite sound like Death Cab.
Yeah, and this is getting into more, developing the themes of this album. Another song about kind of the distance between two people who don't quite understand each other or can't quite see each other for who they are, and I think it has this kind of like reflective but like tormented outsiderness to it, that it's the heart of the classic Death Cab stuff, but it also it's one of those things where it feels like there's a more mature perspective to it than Ben would have written about it many years ago or many albums ago, which I think is good.
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I could easily see like having this kind of detached perspective that the song takes on, like resulting in something that's a little more scathing. But it's like, it's very much like, no, like this. Both parties like maybe kind of tried in this relationship, especially the woman in this relationship, but like it was not received, and therefore like it started getting reflected in the way that the other person was perceived. This all she heard was the sound of slamming doors, etc., etc.
Yeah. The bridge calls back to the joke that leads to the title of Plans.
Yep.
I'm not sure which is worse, if God laughs or if he doesn't. I'm not sure which is worse, if it was love or if it wasn't. And I feel like, I mean, I imagine that just looking. You can look at any relationship through that lens, and like, the plans that we made and what we thought was one thing was just not that thing, and or maybe you just never really know, and that's kind of where the song leaves you.
Yeah. It's like, it's maybe the version of, maybe this is the ultimate version of the song that Ben has like written and hated multiple times over the course of his career. Like
Someday you will be loved.
Someday you will be loved, and
I don't know what
the
one of
we've
the
been doing
songs.
this series for a long time. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yeah, it's all good. That's what the edit's for.
Yeah, exactly. Tiny Vessels was the song
Yes.
I was trying to think of. But like, yeah, it is taking on that like same theme, but from this perspective of like you said, like if it was love or it wasn't, like that is a feeling that a lot of people have, and it's not judgmental to either party in this case.
Yeah, and it's also, this song is not told from the perspective of either person in this relationship, I don't
Right,
think.
yeah. It is definitely a like third party, like, or third person like looking down on this situation thing.
Yeah, it's there's told a little bit of a remove and a little bit more, a little bit more perspective, and that adds to that too. That's not like so in it. It's I think it's a testament to Ben's writing that the song still feels, you still feel the emotion of the song despite it not, like I said, not being so in the moment.
Yeah, and like something that I didn't really notice until you mentioned that just now is like the only thing told from the narrator's perspective is that I'm not sure which is worse part.
Yeah.
Everything else is third person, which I like that. I love a narrator shift for a lot of reasons.
Now, a song that does feel like it is completely in the moment is Pep Talk. And
yes,
this is where I started to realize that this is how special this album is going to be to me. Because for one, they just feel right in the pocket on this. The little like picked guitar leads, the way the rhythm section is propulsive but not overwhelming. This is Death Cab kind of doing what they do best, in my opinion.
100%, yeah.
And this is also where I was just like, I mean, this is clearly a post-divorce song, a song about trying to make sense of life without the person you've been with for a long time and needing someone to lean on, but only having yourself. And this is where I was just like, man, I've lived this. I lived this so much, and that sort of, the song kind of has two choruses. In this first one, I find I'm waking up at sunrise, just lying in bed, giving myself a pep talk to survive the day lying ahead. Just so matter of fact, but such a good lyric.
It really is. Like, from the get-go, the first line of the song, I'll love an incurable mess because I like to tidy up. Like,
yeah.
that is a mood-setting line if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, and the way that it develops into this, when they kind of reveal the actual chorus in the second half of the song, I think it's a great songwriting trick. And both of these parts are so catchy. The melodies are wonderful, and there's this kind of like I said, just searching for someone and not being able to find anyone but yourself is, I feel like kind of not secret, but like a kind of a sub theme of this album that is starting to develop here.
It definitely is, because yeah, like you said, we get that like kind of refrain pseudo chorus where like we're talking about, the narrator's talking about like, trying to be self-motivated. But yeah, you reach the end of this chorus, out on the ledge, you gotta pull me back. Like it turns out I can't do this by myself. And whether or not you should or can rely on the other person in this equation, fully unanswered in this song, which is I think the correct way to go about it.
Right, yeah. Then after that is I Built You a Tower A, the first of two sort of versions of the title track that are on this album. This is the one that is most about this idea of trying to compartmentalize and process in the wake of a breakup. And this version of the song is a pretty chill groove, really lush and more in line with the, I don't want to say lighter elements. I don't think this is a light song at all, but with what they're doing on something like Pep Talk.
Yeah, this is, I didn't know going in on my first listen that this and Tower B were, lyrically the same, but like, very different
similar,
interpretations. Yeah, I don't know if they're 100% the same.
They're not.
Okay. I was going to say, I know there's at least minor differences. But either way, like, this riff is really pretty. And it like almost like catches you off guard when we get to this. No, I don't think like any single line like reveals itself as like the heavy thing. It's just like you're listening to this like, I built you a tower in my mind. Like right out the gate, like that's kind of ambiguous. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing or a good thing. And frankly, like over the course of the song, like it is revealed to, I think, be a thing that goes awry less so than or more so than a good or bad thing. But yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling already.
No, you're good. I think you're spot on with the last thing you said, that so there are some interpretations, some readings of the song that I see on whether it's Genius or even in some of the interviews and stuff, that this song is about trying to prove to someone that you're like trying to build something or give someone something to save a relationship. And I don't think that that's what the song is about at all. I think the song is entirely about the aftermath of a breakup and about it's about the compartmentalization. It's about trying to put that person and your memories of that person in a place where they aren't going to torment you all the time. And which I think is kind of at odds with how Ben is explaining the tower metaphor otherwise, and this idea that like, oh, there's the Death Cab Tower and there's the relationship towers and stuff. And I feel like this song is all about trying to keep the memories from overwhelming you, and then like you said, it goes awry because there's that one little thing that sets you off and brings it all coming back. I don't know if this is like a healthy way to deal with this stuff.
No,
but I see what he's trying to do with it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a read on this song that is like, if we want to take like the kind of like city skyline metaphor for like your mind palace or whatever, kind of at face value, like it could be that just like the way in which you handle like normal everyday life stuff and the way that you handle things that are actually traumatic, like you kind of have to handle it the same way. But when you are dealing with like trying to forget something traumatic or trying to background it, like that coping mechanism of like just trying to let it be a memory falls apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And like, when you're like making a conscious effort to do that, like it's even more likely to backfire on you, I think.
Yeah. I also want to call out my favorite lyric in the song is there are days when I wish you'd just become an acquaintance or a time to time someone. And that idea, this like realizing after you've been in this relationship with someone and you can never really go back to just being friends with them. I'm sure some people can, but in this case, it seems like that's not what's happening here. But just wanting to be able to have that friendship and be able to just like hang out and talk about like movies or whatever, this kind of thing that you,
right.
And wishing that in retrospect that you had just let that friendship stay a friendship.
Yeah, exactly. And Ben mentions this a lot of times in the interviews. He's like, yeah, I don't know of anybody who's had an awesome divorce. I don't know that anybody has who has successfully gone back to being friends in a way that like wasn't at least somewhat hurtful to one or the other party.
Yeah, of course. After that is Envy the Birds. This is a pretty upbeat, riffy 5/8, or at least 5/8 for the first half of the song. Tune is a great little melodic bass line. Nick, always gotta call it out, always the best.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What do you think of this? This feels like kind of it's sort of the middle centerpiece of the album.
It is a little bit, yeah. I like Ben kind of talks about how like the use of 5/8 in the majority of this song was like kind of to simulate the feeling of an argument. Like you're like trying to catch somebody like kind of off guard the way that like more or less quote unquote dropping a beat does. Which like I don't know if that was like kind of grafted on or if that was like the intention the whole time. I have to assume it was the intention the whole time because I do think that Ben is thoughtful like that.
It's also just kind of a cool riff. Like
it is also just a really cool riff. Yeah, that's almost 100% what came first. Because Ben talked about in one of the interviews, like talking to how he talks to other songwriters, and like at one point somebody was like, "Yeah, I like I write the lyrics and then like I write the music around that," and he's like, "Excuse me?" I think it was the Good One podcast interview. And like I think he's mentioned that before in other interviews, but it like kind of like cemented like, oh yeah, like no, Ben is a music then like words person. So yeah, that was almost assuredly the direction that happened. Yeah, there's something that I really like about the arrangement on this song is the like we already have this like kind of choppier like cool riff feel in 5/8, but there's timbre stuff that happens with the guitars that like really accentuates the sense of unease that they're trying to impart upon you. And like I'm sure that was like a hybrid like band and Congleton decision, because I know John like made the argument that the like kind of ending 6/8 part, like things should fall away instead of like really building up to a climax, which I think was the right call. Turns out John Congleton really good at his job.
Yes, I mean, because this album, especially this ending section, the "Speak Without Words, No One Gets Hurt, It's Safer When It's Quiet," is very much about retreat and wanting the isolation and to be away and to be out of the argument or whatever it is. And I feel like it works when they switch to 6/8, they get to this whole kind of ethereal thing going on in the second half of the song. I don't think that the choruses in the first half of the song work nearly as well because I just think they aren't going for the dynamic change as much as they maybe would have in the past, or that they're saving it for the end of the song in a way that just it feels a little unsatisfying.
I can see that, yeah. I think the end kind of drives home like the thesis of this song really seems to be like, yes, we are maybe having this argument, but taking away saying things that are like necessary and true, but even though they are hurtful, like doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah, it just
in any kind of relationship.
It doesn't change what you're feeling, even if you're not saying it.
Yeah, no matter how much you want to convince yourself that like not saying the thing will actually make things better, because like that is clearly the perspective that this song has, is like the intended outcome is that it hurts less if you don't say it, except that it in the long run absolutely does not.
Yeah. And I feel like they sort of turn that around on Stone Over Water a little bit, because I think this song is the third single. This one is so much about trying to like get it back together, specifically like not the relationship but like your life.
Yeah.
And I feel like it has this, the chorus ends with this lyric of I'm trying to hold it together, trying to take the first step into the arms of wherever, whenever, and to trying to go to move into something instead of moving out and away from something like it was in Envy the Birds. It feels like this really important turn in the middle of the album.
Yeah, it really does. And like, the kind of central metaphor of the song, like every day I wake like a stone over water, skipping across the lake before I sink to the bottom, like recognizing that the trying is happening, even if it does ultimately result in you're maybe the same place that you started. Like you have to make that effort in order to move forward, even if like that is not like actually accomplished 100% in this song at all.
Right. I mean, because it's a process. It's a song about like essentially like fake it until you make it. I mean, it's kind of the therapy thing is like you have to. It comes up all the time. Is this you have to like, it's a way to deal with anxiety or depression or whatever it is to just try to like. I don't know how the best way to describe it, but I think read the lyrics to the song. They're describing it.
Yeah. Well, and like we get kind of a classic like Ben Gibbard reckoning with aging moment in that same verse. The how I wish I could say I'm immune to the mirror with temples fading to gray. I'm seeing the end drawing nearer. Like a little fatalistic, like more so than Ben has been on the last few albums about aging. But like everyone has this moment when they look in the mirror and realize they've gotten older. It's like, oh fuck, I'm X years old and I'm basically dead. Like,
yeah, I mean,
no matter how much you don't actually believe that, you're not immune to that thought.
Yeah, I mean, he turned 50 like a week ago. This is, I'm sure that this is very.
We
much
recorded
on
Ben's birthday last week.
I didn't mention this at the beginning of the song. This is my favorite song on this record. This is the one where I feel like 13 years ago or whatever, but it feels fresh in my mind in a way when I think about it. Like I feel like I lived every single word of this song.
Oh God, yeah,
and it's like I don't know. I find the song very comforting because of that, and also a little bit harrowing at the same time. But I love this chorus. I think it's one of the best choruses Ben has ever written, truly, and it's been stuck in my head all week. But the reading about the song was fascinating because first the band didn't want to put it on the record.
Yep.
And Congleton had
I was wondering if we were gonna bring this up.
Oh yeah, Congleton had to convince him to keep it on the record, but at the same time to cut the 9-minute outro that they recorded, which they need to release because I need to hear it, even though I think the song is perfect.
Yeah, I 100% need to know what the other version sounds like. I know it's not as good because there's no way that's as good as what ended up happening.
Right.
But I love that version exists somewhere on a hard drive.
I would be curious if in the vision of this album that had a 9 or 12-minute version of Stone Over Water, if that was the closing track and if the Tower A, Tower B thing was built out of trying to find a different way to close the album. I'm throwing things at the wall there, but it struck me that like there's something about this song that would work as a closing track, especially if you've got the stability song style, extreme ambient outro or whatever it is. But yeah, I do want to hear that.
Please, Death Cab, if you're listening, I know you're not. please release the 12+ minute version of Stone Over Water. We need to hear it.
After that is How Heavenly Estate. This one is I love that they are still able to surprise me, 11 albums into their career, and in the opposite kind of surprise that they were doing on Foxglove through the Clear Cut. This song is so noisy and heavy, the gnarliest bass tone Nick Harmer has ever had. This is the one that feels that you can tell they were listening to a lot of Fugazi.
Oh God, yeah. This one just rips. Like it is noisy as hell. That bass is so heavy and just like so like. I don't want to say 4 on the floor because that's a kick drum thing, but you know what I mean. It's just dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
It's so intense.
Doing what a kick drum would do, but because it's a melodic instrument, it's even there's like an extra element to it, and it's so grindy. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, the song Ben has talked about that this is about a friend who committed suicide and that is like I don't know, it is just kind of reckoning with that idea and like the just sort of similar to the aging thing, but the more extreme version of like just contemplating death basically, and how it is so is such an overwhelming idea.
Yeah, this like I hesitate to talk about this like this, but like this idea of trying to get into the head of somebody who ultimately makes that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I again like I don't want to go too deep into this because it's really fucking awful.
It's be fraught to talk
about,
about
like,
and awful. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but that is kind of the perspective that Ben is taking in this song, like trying to understand like why you would hit that point, or like what is going through your head when you hit that point, without like trying to like actually speculate on like events leading up to that or anything like that.
And referencing that in the song too with the lyric, like there is no closure in your exit.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it is just part of the experience of processing it. Is just it's recognizing that there's you're never gonna know.
Yeah. I do like not to make light of anything in the song, but I really like the right after the death lingered in your doorway, the awaiting invitation like a vampire or a neighbor. I like this juxtaposition of a vampire and a neighbor, implying that they are both like, specters at your door that can only come in if you invite them, but they would like it if you invited them in.
Yeah, and I mean, the vampire thing is also just interesting considering the way that the song is about death, and that's not something that vampires, typically experience.
Right, exactly, yeah.
After that is Trapdoor. Another just kind of left turn stylistically, the most kind of 80s influenced song on this record with this kind of sequenced synth part that the whole song is built around. What do you think of this one?
I really like this one. Like, yeah, like, there's that like real intensity that like builds up towards the end of How Heavenly Estate. And then, yeah, we go into like this very like, not calm necessarily, but like it's like, kind of like some whooshy synth pads and some plucky synth bass, and then you get some synth arpeggios. Like we're almost getting into like more, I hesitate to call like the stuff that Death Cab was doing with synths experimental, but like the more synth leaning stuff that's like, less characteristic of Death Cab as a band. But like I really love this song, honestly. The image of a trapdoor, to kind of signify like not being able to get emotionally close to someone. I love that they double down on it when they get to there's a trapdoor in your heart and a button on your desk well worn from being pressed. That line should not work. That is so borderline cheesy and cartoonish, but it's so good.
Isn't it literally like a Mr. Burns thing? Like,
yes, yes. This is like a Simpsons, like he has a red button under his desk that sends you down to like like Water Trap or something. I haven't watched The Simpsons in a while. Sorry.
I think that lyric is brilliant. It
really is.
It's such an unexpected moment of levity in an album that is not very funny, not very light in really any way. And I was so surprised and like I said, just like delighted when I realized what he was doing with that lyric, and also just like how the song, every chorus of the song adds like one more element to that image of the trapdoor. But the desk thing is just because like sometimes you just have to laugh at how absurd it is that you keep trying to make this thing work that you just know is not gonna work, and that's sort of the vibe I get from what he's trying to do with that lyric.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree, and that's why it works so well, because it's so well placed. It's so sincerely delivered. Like that is a concrete image that like anybody who has experienced any Western pop culture in the last like 50 years can understand.
Yeah. Was it in the Good One podcast that Ben did where I don't remember if it was Ben himself or the interviewer who mentioned that who called out the lyric of "If only the winners write history, there will be nothing on our page" is a really great couplet.
Yeah, I don't remember who specifically it was, but I also think that's a really great couplet.
Yeah, and this idea that like everyone was a willing participant in this relationship, and ultimately nobody like wins at the end.
Yeah, like no matter what your intentions are, like that lead to these kinds of events happening, like nobody comes out a winner. Nobody's like necessarily being malicious for the sake of being malicious or trying to come out ahead. It's stuff that happens and it sucks for everybody.
Yeah. But it's a great song.
It is.
Then you get Riptides, which was the first single released for this record. This is the first time they've pulled a late album track for a lead single, right?
So that's the thing, is they didn't pull it. The label did. Which was really an interesting thing to read about, because basically they were like, so hey, Anti, just what song do you think? And they were like, all right, I get Riptides? I don't know, sure. There was a lot more thought that went into it than that, but like they talked a lot in this cycle kind of about how like there was no ill will towards Atlantic, it sounds like. Whether or not that will continue over the course of the rest of their career, who knows? But it sounds like, based on what we know now, that like Atlantic basically like never got in their way. But the thing that did happen was that, without necessarily any actual like intervention from the label, Ben felt like he had to think about like, well, what is the single gonna be? Is there a single on this album? Like, kind of a self-imposed version of the thing that happened to Thursday with War All the Time. And they, they're like, yeah, with Anti, like they're an album label. Like they don't care if you have, a song that gets a bajillion streams on Spotify because it enters the zeitgeist like that, which I think is really cool. But like, you still have to pick a single, and I guess this is what they went with. It's a really weird pull, but it's a really good song, so cool.
I do think that it is maybe the one song on this album that captures all the elements of the album, because
I think that makes sense.
It's got some of that synth-driven style of Trapdoor, but it's also got a lot of the heavier rock elements that are on the album. It's got that gnarly bass tone, and it builds tension in a really cool way and explodes in the bridge in a really kind of classic Death Cab way. And as a first single, it introduces the ideas of this like exhaustion and defeat, and I mean, it's a pretty good hook. I don't know that it's what I would have picked as a first single, but I think it's when I think about it in those terms of like how it represents the album, I think it does a pretty good job.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think you're spot on about it being like maybe the most representative of the album, just kind of in general, both sonically and thematically. And I think it speaks to the most broad, maybe not like worldwide, definitely not worldwide experience. There are people whose experiences I can't possibly fathom halfway across the world. But like Americans right now, probably a lot of people feeling like this, at least. Sorry, United States people.
Yeah.
America is a different thing. Don't want to try to be like that.
But and that also kind of adds a little more feeling to the I feel as invested as a border guard who's seen too many people leaving to take it to heart lyric.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there is a lot of depth and a lot of associations you can add to that lyric, even if the song is otherwise kind of straightforward about exhaustion, basically.
Yeah, definitely. We get another callback on this song to You've Haunted Me All My Life, that there's a fatal flaw in my heart's design. We on that song there was the there's a flaw in my heart's design for I keep trying to make you mine. It's like a little bit of a tenuous connection, but the wording is almost exactly the same, and I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is because the line comes right after "I'm feeling fine roughly half the time."
Yeah.
But this idea that like, yeah, there's something about it that you just can't get yourself to move on or to see the things are different.
Well, and like it slots thematically too, because again, this song, I think I mentioned this kind of up top, that this song is very much about like the tension between everything that's going on in the world that is absolutely and utterly horrific versus your little problems like your divorce or whatever.
Right.
And it all like flowing through you, a person represented by your heart's design in this case.
Yeah, it's impossible to maintain
like how that works out.
That perspective. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then we get to the penultimate track, "The Flavor of Metal." It's spectacular bass line in this song.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just some wonderful playing on Nick's part. But I think he's playing it on a fretless, and it sounds so smooth. I mean, this song is a little jazzier influenced, I guess. And it's definitely the sort of one of the more dark and contemplative songs on the record, I think. Very much about aging.
Oh yeah, definitely. We get this kind of classic like juxtaposition of a thing from your youth versus either a thing from now or how you have carried that thing into your life now. Like starting off with this like kind of metaphor of the razor blades and the candy, the urban legend from when everybody was a kid apparently, and like bringing that forward to, I have experienced many lovely things in life that have ultimately gone to shit, and my ability to visualize good things has been tainted by that.
Yeah.
Like that is some like real fucking class metaphor writing right there.
Yeah. How do you think the bridge plays into this? Because the bridge is this, it just takes a little light to find its way through the cracks on the darkest of nights. It takes just a little faith, but nothing happens every time I pray. And how that ties to the sort of like fake it till you make it idea that we were talking about on Stone Over Water.
So I think it ties kind of back to that idea and kind of back to the kind of central conceit of the song. It's that like you want to believe that like you can manifest like good things out of bad things, and like that does work sometimes. Like I want to be so clear that like everything isn't bad all the time. Usually I don't think. But in the case of the perspective of this song, like it is like I'm trying my best. I know that these are the things that I have to do to try to make the most out of whatever situation I'm in right now. But man, not really happening for me.
Yeah.
Which I think is like it kind of, it kind of just further like it shows that like while like you may become like jaded over the course of your life, like you feeling the impulse to try is still pretty important, even if it doesn't quite work out.
Totally.
I don't think it's in like a like it's okay, you just got to keep going and like eventually it'll happen, so much as a like sometimes you're gonna try and it's gonna really suck still. I'm sorry, but like I'm glad you're trying. I'm glad I'm trying.
Yeah. And then that leads into I Built You a Tower B, the reprise of the title track, but much more aggressive and heavy and angry almost than the first rendition of it. I don't know. I didn't see any interviews about this. Maybe they talked about it in one that I missed, about the decision to sort of do these two different versions of the title track on the album, and particularly to end the album with this one.
Apparently Paul Simon did something similar to this on one of his albums. I forget which one. But it kind of like lent Ben this idea of like kind of doing two. It was in the World Cafe interview. That's from fairly recently.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess that's kind of what led to this. I think it's really like I might be overthinking it, but I think it's really neat to do this kind of thing on this kind of album where we're exploring the ways in which that you deal with grief with a breakup. Grief is really a good overarching term for I think the kind of central emotion of this album. And that is always going to take many forms. And I think Ben specifically like talking about how like, yeah, this situation, led me to like really seek out therapy again. I'm really trying to approach this album from not a blameless perspective, but a perspective that isn't just pointing fingers all the time and being angry. But man, you got to be a little angry, and you're gonna be a little angry in situations like this. And like I think with I Built You a Tower specifically, I think that anger is directed inward mostly. But I think it also could just vaguely be pointed in all directions, which I think is maybe represented a little bit in the way that this version of this song is presented.
I think that
might be a stretch. But...
No, I think that's a great take and a great reading of the song, and even just to explain how even the guitars sound angry on this song.
Oh my god, everything is just huge and loud on this song.
And they do the dynamic changes in the breaks in these little choruses really well, where they go down to just like bass and then like light synth, and then the sort of build back up at the end into this like it makes me tired, so tired, and just repeating that over and over to get to how that anger, just holding that anger and for so long, it just exhausts you. And that is kind of the unsatisfied place that the album ends. It's just, I don't know what else, I'm just tired.
Yeah and like I don't know that I would want an album like this to end any other way.
Well, that's the thing, is I was sort of positing the Stone Over Water closing track idea, and that is a very optimistic ending for an album like this, and maybe the place that the album needs to end is the more honest place for the album to end is in the anger and the exhaustion.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's to that point, I wonder if that's trying to represent the conditions under which these songs were written more, or like it doesn't seem like it's really Ben's current headspace. I think it's an acknowledgement though that like if you are in a situation like this where you are currently grieving the loss of anything, like there is a resolution in the form, like somewhat like Stone Over Water describes, but like you're gonna really feel it at certain points. I part of me wonders if like originally Tower A was supposed to end side A on the like vinyl record version of this album, and this was supposed to be the closer. That's not the case on the actual physical record, so that kind of throws that theory out the window. But But yeah, I don't know. I like this as a closer. I do think I would also have enjoyed a like slightly extended version of Stone Over Water as a closer too, though. So I guess I shouldn't say I can't imagine anything else.
Yeah, I my thing with this as a closer, I think conceptually it works. I'm always just like, once I got to it and realized that it was doing basically the same song with some lyric changes, but pretty minimal, I always want to be a little more surprised by a closing track lyrically. And I mean, I guess the "it makes me tired, so tired" thing is the kind of turn at the end that the first one, the Tower A, doesn't have.
Right.
So it's got some of that, but and I do think this is like, at least they're trying something different with a closing track that they haven't done before. Gasoline Heart is the other band that I could think of off the top of my head that has an album that does a similar thing, where the opening track on Nostalgia Ain't What It Used to Be is like a full band version of a song, and the closing track is an acoustic version of the same song. But so at least I think that's to say they're trying something they haven't done before. I still kind of don't think Death Cab is a closing track band, 60 and Punk,
Sure.
notwithstanding.
Yeah, that one, gold standard, that may never be met again. Who can say?
Yeah, I mean, it would be crazy if they wrote a better one than that.
I did find my note on the Paul Simon thing eventually.
Okay, yeah.
It just didn't load up the first time. It was inspired by Think Too Much A and Think Too Much B from Hearts and Bones, the Paul Simon album.
Okay, so that's even where the A and B thing comes from.
Yeah, yep. I have not listened to either of these songs in full, so I can't attest to how similar they are in like their construction to this, but it's a point of inspiration nonetheless.
I was wondering if the A and B was just because you can't call it Tower 1 and Tower 2.
Okay, fair point. Okay, to the point of something like this being surprising, there's a world in my brain where there was an arrangement of this album where Tower A is immediately followed by Tower B. I think that would be too much, but I also feel like it would be a bold move in a cool way.
I mean, that's kind of the Company Calls epilogue thing, even though those are two extremely different songs, but they're related enough that you can kind of do that.
Fair point, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the album. I think, with some minor qualms, this album is really, really great. It's just awesome to have Death Cab feeling this, having this much excitement around a Death Cab album almost 30 years into their career, like we were saying.
Yeah, like I feel like I have reached a point with several bands that I have liked for a very long time where a new album comes out, it has a recognizable thing that I enjoy from the band, especially like if it comes after a stretch of albums that I was like less hot on, and I find myself really enjoying it in the moment, and it fizzles away. I don't think I feel that way about this album. I feel like this is going to endure as a highlight of the catalog as the years go on, and only time will tell, obviously, but it really, you can tell that the band made this album because this is the album they wanted to make. And I think just like the combination of that, the way that they wrote it, the way that they worked with John on it, I think all really like came together into a like really stellar final product. I really think that this is, I'll put it this way, this is higher on my list than it was on Ben's list.
Yeah, same.
When we get to the discography ranking. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's really good. And I didn't really expect that this far into their career. Even having listened to it when it came out, again, semi-passively, as I am often wont to do on a first listen.
Yeah, so you mentioned discography rankings. Let's we're at the end of the Death Cab series. Let's do our rankings.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll feel good about this one the second it leaves my mouth. This one was hard. This one was really hard.
Do you want to go first?
I can go first, yeah.
All right.
And I mentioned this before. I'm going to minimally explain these because I feel like I always over-explain my choices here. You just have to live with it. Sorry, listeners. So, again, as if you've been listening, we included the first song. You can play the first album as you can play these songs with chords, even though some people don't count that. So we have 12 albums. That is my number 12, as you can play these songs with chords. 11 for me is Codes and Keys. 10 is the photo album. 9 is Songs About Airplanes. 8 is Thank You for Today. 7 is Kintsugi. 6 is Asphalt Meadows. 5 is We Have the Facts and We're Voting Yes. 4 is this one, I Built You a Tower. 3 is Narrow Stairs. 2 is Plans. And I kind of knew this going into this series and did not have my mind changed over the course of it. Number 1 for me is Transatlanticism.
We've got pretty different rankings, and I like that.
I'm not surprised. I feel like, sorry, not to explain my unexplained list. Feel like the middle is pretty, like, not random, but like I couldn't find an order that I was like, yeah, this is 100% what I believe. Just like the middle of the list is like, I like these albums quite a bit. And like on a different day, they might be in a different order.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I'm gonna actually change one thing on my list before I read it because I'm just looking at this. The middle, like you said, the middle part of this is so fungible in the way that like all these albums are really good but have flaws. But I'm just gonna read my list. Okay.
Yeah.
At number 12, I have You Can Play These Songs with Chords. 11, Something About Airplanes. 10, Codes and Keys. 9, We Have the Facts and We're Voting Yes. 8, The Photo Album. 7, Thank You for Today. 6, Kintsugi. 5, Narrow Stairs. 4, Asphalt Meadows. 3, Transatlanticism. 2, I Built You a Tower. And number 1, Plans.
It's a good list.
So this album landed very high for me. Zach, if you're listening, sorry that I put this over Transatlanticism. It's what I was feeling in the moment, so...
I think that's valid. This one felt weird because like in a way I'm like on some days I definitely enjoy the Photo album more than a lot of Death Cab stuff because it rocks so hard.
Yep.
But I also acknowledge that the lows of that album are pretty low. But yeah, I don't know. This whole like you said, a lot of these albums have flaws but are overall just like pretty damn good. And like I want to be so clear. I don't think I've fully disliked anything that we've talked about this series, like at all.
Yeah, totally.
Like even like first album, like kind of got mostly redone with songs about airplanes. Codes and Keys is like I think a pretty like well sung low point in the career in general, but it's still got such like great moments and like there's still recognizably Death Cab stuff on there, even if they were like really trying something different. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They've never made an album that's all bad.
Yeah, for sure.
We should do some random recommendations. What do you have for this week?
So this week I want to recommend an album that I actually am in the middle of listening to, like not like right this second, but I started listening to it right before we started recording, and still have to get to the end of it, but it's good enough already that I feel comfortable recommending it. I want to recommend the album, and I apologize if I pronounce this wrong. I should have done a little more research going into this. The band is called Bonidori, and the album is called Kimyo. This is a collaborative project between Patrick Shiroishi, who I've talked about on the past on this podcast, member of the Armed, also just an incredible solo artist in his own right, and Randall Taylor, who makes music as Amulets. These two have been kind of running in the same scene for a long time. The like kind of greater U.S. experimental scene. Both are Asian Americans whose families have experienced a lot over the course of their time in America, and they wanted to come together and make a project that was like distinctly reflective of being of Asian descent, specifically in the United States. And it's just this really cool, like kind of melding of the work that both artists have done so far, to the point where like it melds so well that it doesn't quite sound like either of their individual projects. They also have a bunch of really cool collaborators on this record, including Pauline Lay and Dylan Fujioka, and a couple of other like pretty recognizable names running around the scene. And yeah, it's this really cool, like there's not one central sound to it, but it all feels of a piece. My understanding is the closer is like really incredible, and I'm very excited to get to it sometime after we finish recording here. But yeah, there's just like a lot of like intense distorted guitar, some really cool electronics going on. Obviously, Patrick shreds some saxophone, supplies a bunch of vocals on this record. Yeah, if you've been interested in anything either of these artists have done, I highly recommend checking this out. And yeah, I don't know if they have any plans to play shows, but I hope they do, because I think that would be really cool. But yeah, Bonidori Kimyo, go check it out. It's
cool.
on Temporal Drift.
Sweet.
Yeah. What you got this week?
I'm going to recommend a new band called Haver and their album The Ghost Dance. This is a new project from Frightened Rabbit guitarist Billy Kennedy, and it is an album that is both, musically similar to Frightened Rabbit and also largely about processing and reacting to and responding to Scott Hutcherson's death. And it is at times a tough listen, but man, is this a great record. It's if you like Scottish indie rock, like this is the thing to check out. And if you like just really good songwriting, also highly recommend this one. I hope this band tours. I hope they come to the US at some point. I would really like a chance to see them, and I think this album is going to be a real contender for my list at the end of the year.
Awesome. I have not checked this out yet, but I definitely want to. That is a glowing recommendation.
Yeah. All right. Next up on the show, we are doing we're doing one little coda to our Death Cab series. We're doing an episode on the Postal Service's Give Up next week as sort of a between series thing, and then I guess we should just reveal what our next big series is.
It is a big one. Let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, we're going through the discography of AFI for basically almost the rest of the year through the fall, which is AFI time.
Yeah, that is 100% why I picked it. And conveniently, maybe they'll have a new album not long after we finish that series. Who can say?
That'd be pretty cool. I guess they have kind of picked up their pace recently.
Yeah, well, so Jade mentioned on his Hard Lore interview that they have the record basically like half written and recorded already.
Okay, cool.
It's kind of a sibling album to Silver Bleeds the Black Sun, which as we all know, I really liked. So I'm very excited to do this series.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. This is gonna be a lot of first listens for me because the AFI is not a band that I've spent a ton of time with, but I'm very excited.
I'm very excited too because they are a band I've spent a lot of time with for a lot of my life, and
Good.
I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on those albums.
Yeah, this will be fun. All right.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming up in the next few months. In the meantime, you can find us on the internet at noisefloorpodcast.com. Send us an email at noisefloorpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at noisefloorpod. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.